Hello everyone, welcome to CAD Builder 2.0.0. We have a lot of new features in this update, so let's just jump right into it. We will begin with design utilities. By far the biggest addition to this module would be a 3D Go. So if you go to your 3D window, at the bottom right there's a new button called 3D Go. Once you click on that, the menu will pop up, and it is here that you will select whether it should send via phone message, so a text message, or via email, the recipient's address, email address, or phone number. Here's also where you can change the text and which quality links you want to be made available. Higher devices, higher performance devices can view higher quality links. And it is here that you also set the amount of time that the link is active. We'll set this one to just 1 day active, though you can do a maximum of 30 days. Once you hit send, the recipient will receive the text. And on the recipient side, once they open one of those 3 links, they can view the room directly within a 3D environment, as if they were within CAD Builder's own 3D window. So you've got a single click or single finger on the phone to move the camera around, pan it around, 2 fingers or right click to rotate the camera, and zoom in, zoom out. And so you wouldn't need to print out a bunch of views and then formulate an email and send that over to them. You can just let them explore it themselves. A picture is worth 1,000 words, but a full 3D environment is worth 1,000 pictures. We have also improved the way you draw your walls. So if you select a wall segment and look to its attributes, you'll notice a new option called Length Anchor. And this decides which point stands still when you change the length of that wall segment and which point will move. And that's done from the perspective of a person viewing the wall. So for instance, if I select the length anchor to be the left joint, that'll be from the perspective of the person, this point right here. And now I change the length of the wall segment, it's the other end point that will move. And if I switch it to the other side, right joint, that'd be this end point, that would make the other wall segment point move. Additionally, you will notice a new section called Actions. And this is where you can add T-walls with specific attributes to make this design easier. Add wall will add real walls, whereas add construction line will add in guidelines, invisible walls. So for instance, if I click on add wall, I will then select which face to draw it on. Let's say if I select the front zone, the wall is brought in, and you can then modify it afterwards by manually dragging it around or manually resizing it. But if you look to its attributes, you'll notice a wall offset left and wall offset right section. So if I want this wall to be specifically, let's say 40 inches away from the right edge, I could type in 40, and the wall will be moved accordingly. I can also change the angle, which will change the way that the wall is facing while keeping the connection to the host segment the same. And if you have a wall segment that has a front zone and a back zone, then the back zone will not be split by the wall on the other side. So this remains as a single unified elevation view, whereas this side is split between the 2 front zone segments. You can do the same with guidelines as well. So if I select this wall segment and I say add construction line on this edge, then this guideline is added in. And you can do also the same with guidelines T-wall. So if I make some guideline for an island, I can then select it and add construction lines or real walls directly onto this wall. The dimension profiles also have the ability to add in the wall name in your cabinet name, in your cabinet label. So if you go to your application settings, you go to your dimensions section, let's say I'll modify this basic profile right now, it's just putting in the cabinet number. But if I add in another variable, specifically the wall letter, they will indicate which wall they are snapped onto. So this is wall A, so it's 1A and 2A, but if I move it onto wall B, it's 2B. Moving to wall C is 2C. If I move it off of any available wall, it will just be left empty. And the same will go if I drag it into bill of materials. The room name is empty, so it will leave that variable empty. And this just further allows you to customize and specify where on the design the cabinet is located. If you're looking for just, let's say, a cabinet list or other similar report where it lists out the cabinets labels, you can view it and see which wall they belong to directly from there. Moving on to the cabinet construction side of things, some joints have been updated with additional options. If you were to be using a Cabaneo joint, you'll notice a new option called Cabaneo mounting type. Now traditionally our joint would do it on the surface where it drills 3 pockets to host the inside of the Cabaneo with the lip on top of the surface. But you can now also select flush with the surface, in which case it makes a secondary pocket so that the lip is flush to the host surface. And if there's a cover cap involved, you can select flush cover cap, which makes a different pocket for the lip as well as the inner channel to once again make the cover cap flush with the surface. And if you were to be cutting this out of HPL, you can also select HPL on the surface. It slightly modifies the spec of the on the surface cuts so that the HPL joint is tighter and works with the material. Similarly, the adjustable shelf boring and shelf pin joints have some additional options. If you look to your relevant connection, you'll see that the holes can now be arranged in a similar way that you do with hole boring. Front to rear, rear to front, front and rear and centered. If, for example, you want to drill holes for your adjustable shelf and then subsequently at the same time leave holes for potential adjustable rollout trays in the future, you can select front and rear, where you have the front hole cluster and the rear hole cluster whose locations you can manipulate directly. So for instance, I will do front hole position distance away from front being 2 inches for the first hole, and I'll increase the hole quantity to 2. And I'll have the second hole be whatever spacing I set in the front hole's spacing parameter. So maybe I want it to be specifically 3 inches away from the first one, because that's where the second hole or the first hole of the drawer guide will be. I'll do the same for the rear hole position, so I'll keep it at 2 inches, and let's say that the rear hole quantity is also 2, and that I want that second rear hole to be 2 inches away from the first rear hole. And the middle holes I will leave empty. And if you look at the result of this, we can see in the cabinet construction that the other 2 columns have been drilled as specified. Now remember, these are spec'd relative to the front and back edges of the adjustable shelf. So we have the first hole from the front edge of the shelf, first hole from the rear edge of the shelf, and then the subsequent holes are offset from those. While on the topic of adjustable shelf plan boring, rollout trays and rollout shelves have a new joint section of their own. So if you go to your connection, specifically on the interior joints, rollout shelf or rollout tray, you'll notice you can apply a joint between rollout trays and partitions and rollout trays and sides. And what will happen here is if you select the appropriate hole boring joint, then CABuilder will pair the height of those holes along with the offset from the front for the drawer guide to make an array of drawer guide pre-drilling that you can adjust up and down with. So let's see how this works. So once you have the joint in place for the side and the partition, if I want, for example, this cabinet to have 2 rollout trays that are fully adjustable within this opening, how would this work? Well, I would first go within the cabinet and make 2 rollout trays. And by default, they will just be regular rollout trays with 1 row of holes bored for their drawer guides. But then I could go within the rollout tray parameters and I have a new checkbox, adjustable rollout shelf or tray enabled. So if I enable this for both boxes, we'll now treat them in a similar way that we do with adjustable shelves. So we'll create one common set of columns and rows to be able to drill it for the drawer guide locations along different heights. And this enables you to create cabinets with adjustable rollout trays. Returning to the drilling joints, if you drill for a joint, be they for screws, for dowels, for cabaneos, for refix, you'll notice some new logic available. So for instance, I will select my trial conformat screws, and you'll notice side hole orientation. So be they fixed depth holes or through holes, you can force it to drill from one face or another. So for instance, if it's a fixed depth, you can do it from joint face from outside face, or from finished material face or unfinished material face. And if it's a through hole, it has those options plus free rotation. Free rotation allowing it to cut from either side when it nests, so it avoids flipping as much as possible. And what this allows you to do is, if you need it from one side or another, you can force it to do so. So for example, if you have a countersink screw or bit that you want to be countersunk from the outside of the joint, you can then select from outside face, or perhaps from unfinished material face, so that the finished material face is left alone. Returning to the cabinet construction side of things, legs have some additional logic that you can use. So if you go to your toe kick, legs, you'll see front leg, back leg, left and right leg orientations are available. So if you have some asymmetrical legs and you want to change the way that they appear by default onto your cabinet, this is where you can do that. But you can also override this within the wireframe of a cabinet. So for instance, if I want this specific caster to face another way, I can then select it, and I have this rotation angle that I can change at will. While on the topic of legs, the leg material properties have been expanded. So if you go to any leg material and you go to the leg specific section, you'll notice you can assign diameter and depth and enable up to 3 holes with X and Y coordinates relative to the center to be pre-drilled out onto the bottom of your cabinet. And if you want them to be sent to the CNC, then you enable pre-drill hole checkboxes, leading to holes being drilled straight onto the bottom. And so if you have asymmetrical hole drilling for your legs, do make sure that the orientation is set correctly for front, back, left, and right legs. Knobs and pulls will have much the same properties. So if you go to any knob or pull, you'll notice in the pull specific section, you can assign hole diameter and hole depth in the same exact way, enable up to 3 holes with X and Y coordinates from the center and pre-drill for those. So if you were to assign some holes here, then the holes will be pre-drilled for those associated knobs and pulls. The X and Y coordinates are determined based on the orientation of the knob if it were to be used as a drawer front pull. So X will be going horizontally, Y is vertical, and then for doors it will be flipped. X in this case is vertical and Y is horizontal, away or closer to the edge of the door. Moving on to the report side of things, if you look over to your reports module, you'll notice a new report type called door summary list. And this will be a summary of your door and drawer front assembly, similar to how we have the drawer box summary list. So it gives you the overall size, overall assembled size, including edge banding of the door or drawer front, the cabinets it belongs to, and the quantity, how many of them should be assembled. Below this, you have the cut list table associated with that size, as well as the hardware information below. So if it's a door, it will show you hinge and knob/pull information. If it's a drawer front, it will show you the knob/pull, as well as any metal drawer box hardware associated with it. And it gives you the locations of these hinges and knobs relative to the left and bottom edge of the item. So if you assemble your doors, or if you take your doors and then manually drill holes for the knobs and pulls, this is a very useful printout to use. Going back to the design module, if you look over to your application settings, you'll notice a new section called variables. So this is where you can create custom variables that you can use to pre-fill information for your page templates, similar to how you would with any other standard variable as found in your design settings. So we will make, for instance, all new designs have the finish field, and I'll leave the value empty. You just click on this plus here to create more and more variables, or click on the X to delete them. And once you apply every other design from there, we'll have in the design settings, the custom variables section, all those new variables that you can modify here specifically for that design. So if some variables are not needed specifically for this design, I can just delete them and they won't appear in my templates. And then you can assign a value here. So let's say the value for the finish is just test. Now, when you're using your page templates, you can call to that variable like any other variable. So if you have a text field or a table where you type in some text, you can search for the variable, just type in variable. Here it is, custom variable finish. Double click, let it fill in, And if I use it in a page template, that test value will be filled right in. And so this allows you to further customize your page templates to have the relevant information you may want in a design printout without having to constantly fill those in after the fact. If you publish your catalogs to ProKitchen, we have some news for you as well. So if you want the prices of your cabinets to be dynamically calculated within ProKitchen itself, we have opened up the design options pricing within that section too. So for instance, if you want different square footages for your door, you can select a door in your Create Global Options menu, and you have the ability to do per upper door square footage, or premium and upcharge, as was before. Or for your construction methods, you can assign some linear footage or cubic footage or square footage of the face of the cabinet and have that be calculated directly within ProKitchen's manufacturing reports. We have additionally filled in some missing modifications. So if you go to your cabinet sides, for instance, it used to be that we had just a finished side lift right in both, but we have added the side panel and side applied door as well as false door modifications on both edges of the door, or just left and right sides, each of course with their own upcharges you can apply. If you import designs from ProKitchen while also designing within CAD Builder, we have also made it simpler for you to do so. So you would normally want to operate in CAD Builder within CAD Builder's native design options mode. But if you import designs from ProKitchen, you will need to be operating within ProKitchen's global options mode in order to have the appropriate data assigned to the correct cabinets. We have made that switch automatic. So if you go to your application settings, you'll have the same setting as before, default cabinet options mode, either CAD Builder or ProKitchen. But once you import a ProKitchen design, that will automatically temporarily switch to ProKitchen's global options mode. And then once you create a new design within CAD Builder or open a CAD Builder native design, then it will switch back to whatever the default is. And you can quickly switch between the two as well by clicking on empty space, look into the grid attributes, down at the bottom, ProKitchen's global options checkbox. So if it's turned off, it's within CAD Builder's options. If it's turned on, it's within ProKitchen's global options. We have some exciting news on the machining side of things as well. This update marks the first time we've integrated ourselves with beam saws, which are saws that use NC code to control and cut the parts. So if you go to a machine, make it saw type, and you'll notice that you can assign a post processor now called saw CP out PRV. So right now we're outputting to CP out file format, which is compatible with a wide range of beam saws. But the foundation of this project also sets up potential integrations with pod and rail, and with chaining beam saws, pod and rail, and normal nested CNCs together into a single manufacturing link. Our bread and butter nested routers also have a new setting available, also within the machine library, called corner alignment. So this is going to set where the parts are pushed, which corner the parts are pushed towards when they are nested. For instance, if I were to optimize this cut list with my top right alignment saw, then all the parts will be pushed at the top right, at positive X and positive Y in this case. And if I were to go back and use the, for instance, the bottom left CNC alignment, we would push them instead to the bottom left corner. And so if you have some special needs where if moving to positive Y would actually end up causing you some problems in manufacturing, you can now use this nesting orientation parameter to shift it to the appropriate corner. 2.0.0 also marks the release of drill block algorithm updates that allows us to host some otherwise irregular drill blocks that use the reference point a way that is not aligned from the 00 drill bit. So for instance, within this Como machine, we're now able to use this column of drill bits here, as well as this secondary column that is away from the original 00 drill bit. This flexibility also opens us up for other machines that use some irregular dynamic drill bit position referencing, further enabling us to integrate with such machines. As always, you can view our release notes on our website at cadbuildersoftware.com/release notes for a full list of changes. Thank you, and we will see you in the next video.